two-way tables. Okay, now two-way tables, or a two-way table is just a table, obviously, but that shows the outcomes of two different events, all right, or two different experiments. So a table that shows the outcomes of two different experiments. Okay, it will only be two. It's called a two-way table, so you can't put more than two things in this table. Okay, I'm just going to show you. For example, a coin is flipped. And a die, or dice, it doesn't really matter, is rolled. So we're going to draw a two-way table to represent this. Okay, now guys, do we recognize that there are two separate things happening here? All right, the one experiment is flipping the coin, the other one is rolling the die. Okay, so we are going to put the coin flip, we're going to put that down the column. You'll see now when we draw it. And rolling the die, we're going to put across the row. Okay, if we think of a table, it has rows and it has columns. Okay, so the rows go across and the columns go down. So what you're going to do is the first, almost like the corner block here, we're going to leave blank. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit scattered. My mind is a bit scattered. What are the outcomes if you are flipping a coin? What can happen? What are the two things that can happen? Heads or tails. Okay, so we're going to put heads here and then tails there. So that goes down the column. Okay, do you guys see what I mean by putting it in the column? Then what are the outcomes when you're rolling a die? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that is going to go across the row at the top. Okay, so for this, you're literally listing the different outcomes that you can have. Okay, so for the coin, heads or tails. For the die, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now what we're going to do is we're going to match them up in each block. Okay, so we're going to say, here, your coin can land on heads and your dice or die can land on a 1. So we'll say that this, almost like the combined outcome is heads and 1. Right? Does that make sense? Maybe I'll just write the 1 like that so that it doesn't look like an I. All right, so out of the two experiments that are happening, the coin can land on heads and the die can land on 1. Okay, so that's like the combined outcome that you can get. Obviously, that's not the only combined outcome that you can get. Your coin can also land on heads, but then your die on 2. So that's another possible combined outcome. Right? What about heads and 3? Then heads and 4. Heads and 5 and heads and 6. Okay, so do you see what I mean by we're matching them up in the block? All right, we can draw our blocks in just now. But then obviously your coin can also land on tails and then any of these numbers. So we're going to match them up. So tails and 1, then tails and 2, tails and 3, tails and 4, tails and 5, and lastly, tails and 6. Okay, let's draw that so that it actually looks like a table. Sorry, I just need to wait for the ink to dry quickly before I do the rest. Actually, let me go from the back there. Now guys, you could have done it the other way around. Okay, you could have put your heads and tails at the top and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going down. All right, then your table would just be a long one instead of a long one like going across. Okay, it's fine. It doesn't matter which one you put in the rows and which one in the columns. It's fine as long as all of these pairs are in your table. All right. Let's just quickly add here that what we've done here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the possible outcomes of rolling the die. Okay, so you list all of the possible outcomes. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here, heads and tails, these are the possible outcomes of flipping the coin. All right, and once you have your possible outcomes listed, you need to match them up. Okay, and then that's how you do your two-way table. We are now going to use this two-way table to answer some probability questions. Okay, because we are doing probability, so we do need to get to some of those. So question 1, how many outcomes are in this experiment? Okay, so not a probability question yet. We're first just asking us how many outcomes are in this experiment. Yes, 12. All right, by that they mean outcomes in the whole experiment, both things that have happened, the coin being flipped and the die being rolled together. All right, so for this, we're going to have to count the blocks. Oh, I see I actually left a line out in my table. Sorry, let me just add this in here. There we go. Now we can count the blocks there. All right, so we have 6 blocks and 6 blocks, so that's 12 altogether. All right, or what you can do for this, we see that we have 2 possible outcomes for the one experiment. And then how many possible outcomes do we have for the other one? 6. What's 2 times 6? 12. All right, so it will always work like that. The number of rows that you have and the number of columns. All right, so how many outcomes are in this experiment? You can just write there 2 times 6 is equal to 12. Then in brackets, I'm just going to say or count the blocks. Okay, this outcomes that they're asking about here, this is basically pairs. When you've paired them up. Okay, they're asking for how many pairs are in this experiment. Second question, now we're going to do a bunch of probability questions. So I'm going to say, what is the probability that, and then we'll do A, because all of the next questions are all probability questions. So A, the coin landed on heads while the die landed on 5. Okay, so we're looking for heads 5. Does that make sense? The coin landed on heads and the die landed on 5. So we're looking for heads 5 over there. How many heads 5s are there out of 12? Okay, only one. So what do we think that probability is? 1 over 12. Okay, so the probability of H5, heads 5, there's only one possible outcome where it lands on a head or heads and on a 5. So heads 5 is going to be 1 over 12 possible pairs in total. All right, B. What is the probability that the coin landed on tails? Oh, sorry. Are they saying anything about the dice? No, just tails. All right. So they're actually just asking for the probability of tails. How many blocks do we have with where the coin landed on tails? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Out of how many blocks in total? 12. 6 over 12. What is that when I simplify it, guys? What goes into 6 and 12? 6, hey? So 6 goes into itself once and into 12 twice. So the probability of the coin landing on tails is a half. And we know that, hey? If you're just flipping a coin, the probability of that coin landing on tails is a half anyway. All right, but now we're seeing it again in this example as well. It works out that way. All right, C. The die landed on 1. Okay, so now we're looking for the probability of 1 being in that pair. In how many blocks do we have a 1? 2, right? They haven't specified anything about the coin. So it can be heads and 1. There is a 1 there. Or it can be tails and 1. All right, so 2 out of 12. So that's the probability of the die landing on 1 is 2 out of 12. Which, if you simplify it, you're going to divide 2 by 2. That will give you 1. And what's 12 divided by 2? Is 6. Okay, so that's 1 over 6. And isn't that true, guys? If you're rolling a die, how many numbers are on the die in total? 6. And how many ones are there? Only 1. All right, so the probability of a dice or a die landing on 1 is always 1 over 6. Okay. D. Oops, dropped my pen there. All right, for D, what is the probability that the coin, this is the last one that we're going to do together, landed on heads while the die landed on an odd number? Okay, so we're looking for H and then an odd number. All right, so in our table, H1 is 1 an odd number? Yes, okay, so that's one of them. H3 and H5. Are there any other H's that have odd numbers that I haven't mentioned? H1, H3, H5, so that is 3 over 12. All right, guys, if you have 12 blocks, 12 pairs, then that is always going to go at the bottom of your fraction. Okay, if you have 16 pairs, that's always going to go at the bottom of your fraction. All right, so the answer here, if we say, sorry, for D, if I just go back up quickly, we say probability of H and odd. Right, we said that there was 3. Okay, so 3 over 12, which if we simplify that, we divide 3 by 3 and 12 by 3, we're going to end up with 1 over 4. Okay, that's how you use a two-way table. I'm going to ask you guys to quickly do exercise 4, which I'll put on the board now. And then I'm going to hand out a worksheet and I'll tell you which questions to do on the worksheet. Okay. Exercise 4. Sorry, let me just move this down. There we go. There is exercise 4. You're going to have to redraw that table, please. So now they're saying a 6-sided dice, that's just a normal one, all right? It has 6 sides, is rolled twice, and the sum of the faces the dice landed on is calculated. Yes. All right, so outcomes of the first dice roll. You don't actually have to write this outcomes of the first and outcomes of the second, all right? You can just do 1 to 6 and 1 to 6, that's fine, but you can add it in if you want. Now, guys, this is important. They're saying the sum of the faces. So that means whatever the first dice is landing on and whatever the second dice is landing on, you add them together. Okay, some board games you have to do that. You have 2 and you roll them and you add the 2 numbers together. All right, and that's your total. So that is what's going to go in these blocks. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at the ones that they filled in already. First dice roll, you get a 1. Second dice roll, you get a 1. What's 1 plus 1? 2. Okay, do you see that? First dice roll, you get 2. Second dice roll, you get 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay, they filled in that whole first row for you. So you're adding those 2 numbers together, and that is what's going to go in the block. Okay, you're not writing a pair like we did. You're adding the numbers together. Okay, they filled in a couple along the way, I think just for you to check that you're doing the right thing. So please copy and complete the table, and then you're going to answer those questions. All right, that are listed down there. I'm handing out a worksheet, and I'll tell you which ones you must do on that worksheet.